This critique examines a language learning lesson plan titled SpeakDuo 1316, which breaks down English expressions like take up a challenge and miss out on, alongside prompts for breakout room discussions.
And jumping right into the assessment here, while the material is clean and highly organized, there are specific pedagogical and structural areas that can be optimized to deepen the learner's experience.
The foundational reliance on isolated sentences restricts the learner's ability to grasp the nuanced pragmatics of these expressions.
Yeah, it really does, because when you look closely at the initial definitions and examples, target idioms like miss out on or light up, they're presented strictly within single disconnected example sentences.
Right.
Like they introduce miss out on with just one solitary sentence, which is many people miss out on amazing experiences because they don't know how to learn effectively.
And the weakness there is that presenting these phrases in that way completely removes the emotional, the situational, and the conversational context needed to truly understand how native speakers employ them.
Exactly. You're stripping the vocabulary of its natural ecosystem.
You get the literal dictionary definition, but you lose the tone of voice.
You lose the facial expressions.
Right. You don't get the situational triggers that actually prompt a native speaker to use that specific phrase in the first place.
It treats vocabulary as a sterile mathematical formula rather than a dynamic communicative tool.
Which is dangerous for advanced learners.
Oh, absolutely. It leaves the learner totally uncertain about the appropriate settings. Like if they just read that light up means to suddenly show happiness, but they've only seen it in a vacuum.
They have no idea if it's an expression they should use in a formal boardroom presentation or if it's strictly reserved for casual storytelling with friends at a pub.
Right. And that hesitation is just a killer for fluency. Because if they don't know the social boundaries of a phrase, they just won't use it.
They'll just default to something safe.
Yeah, they'll say he became happy instead of his eyes lit up.
So the suggestion here is that we should weave these expressions into cohesive narratives or multi-turn dialogues to demonstrate their natural habitat and interaction within continuous speech.
I love that approach, because seeing the connective tissue between the phrases fundamentally shifts the learning from just rote memorization to genuine intuitive comprehension.
Let's look at some concrete examples of how to do that. You could construct a brief workplace scenario where two colleagues debate a new project. And you naturally embed phrases like have something against and take up a challenge and stick to all within a single flowing conversation.
So rather than 3 separate slides, you have one script.
Exactly. Colleague A could say, I think we should take up a challenge and redesign the entire workflow before Q3.
Okay.
And then colleague B responds, look, I don't necessarily have anything against the idea, but given our current timeline, management usually prefers to stick to our traditional methods.
That is so much richer. Because in just that one short exchange, the learner actually gets to witness the friction.
They see the negotiation happening.
Right, they immediately understand that have something against is often used defensively or diplomatically to soften a disagreement.
They aren't just memorizing a phrase, they're absorbing a professional interaction strategy.
Which is what adult learners really want.
Alternatively, you could present a short, relatable journal entry from a language learner that organically uses mother tongue pickup and speed up in one paragraph.
Showing how the concepts connect seamlessly.
Exactly. It could read something like, at first, I kept trying to translate everything back into my mother tongue, which really slowed me down. But once I started to naturally pick up the audio patterns from watching movies, I was able to speed up my overall comprehension.
That's a highly relatable context for the target audience, too.
It shows the learner exactly how to deploy these expressions confidently.
And moving on to the pacing of the lesson, the immediate jump from passive definition to open-ended breakout room discussion creates a jarring pedagogical gap.
It really is a massive, intimidating hurdle.
Because the weakness here is that asking a student to read the definition of a phrase, like hold a conversation briefly, answer one question, and then thrusting them directly into a breakout room, often results in cognitive overload.
You see this signaled in the material with those slides featuring a cheerful penguin flying on a paper airplane.
Which is quite ironic.
The flightless bird taking flight.
Right. Going from 0 to 60 with no safety net is exactly what causes students to crash.
It's the equivalent of asking someone to read a short pamphlet about the mechanics of swimming and then immediately tossing them into the deep end of the pool.
Without a bridge of guided practice, learners tend to panic. And in language learning, there's that concept of the affective filter.
Yes.
When a student feels stressed or put on the spot, their brain literally builds a psychological wall.
They can't access the new complex information they just read.
Exactly. So they revert to simpler, previously known vocabulary during the breakout session rather than taking the risk of actively practicing the new target phrases.
If they are supposed to be practicing have something against, they panic, the filter goes up, and they just say, I dislike.
Right. The breakout room completely loses its purpose. They survive the interaction, but they don't advance their skills.
So, our suggestion here is implementing a bridge of controlled practice activities will smoothly scaffold the transition from passive comprehension to active, unguided production.
It's all about building cognitive muscle memory.
You wouldn't walk into a gym and immediately try to lift the heaviest weight without a warm-up.
No, you wouldn't. They need an intermediate space where they can manipulate the language safely.
For concrete examples of this, just before the Penguin breakout room slide, you might insert a short activity where learners must correct intentionally flawed sentences using the new vocabulary.
I think error correction is fantastic for this.
You give them a sentence like, he didn't wanted to took up a challenge, and the student has to physically correct the grammar to, he didn't want to take up a challenge.
It forces them to engage with the structural boundaries of the idiom without the pressure of coming up with the context themselves.
Another option is a rapid-fire matching game where students link the new expression to a specific tone or scenario, ensuring they've internalized the mechanics and built confidence before speaking freely.
So you could provide a randomized list of situations on one side of the screen, like refusing to change your unhealthy diet or arriving late and missing the opening act of a concert.
And on the other side, you have the target phrases.
Right, and the student has to rapidly map stick to or miss out on to the correct scenario.
These intermediate steps are just a few methods to ensure the breakout rooms are highly effective.
Because by doing these low-stakes activities, they validate their understanding. When they finally see that penguin slide, they aren't leaping blindly into the unknown.
It fundamentally changes the emotional temperature of the breakout room.
It goes from a source of panic to a productive, comfortable space.
Which leads us to the actual content of those breakout sessions. The provided practice questions lack the friction or complexity necessary to stimulate extended, advanced-level discourse.
This is a critical mismatch in the material. They are teaching highly expressive, advanced vocabulary, but the prompts designed to generate speech are just too basic.
The weakness is that prompts such as, what is a skill you were able to pick up very quickly, or have you ever missed out on a great event, are overly straightforward.
They're almost transactional.
They typically elicit brief, factual one-sentence answers.
Like the sample answer provided in the text about missing a birthday party due to work.
Yes. And ironically, that limits the opportunity to actually practice holding a conversation.
Which is one of the target phrases. If student A says, I missed a party because of work, and student B has absolutely nothing to push back on, the conversation just dies.
There is no debate. There is no need to elaborate or justify.
And zero emotional stakes. The vocabulary gets used exactly once, checked off a mental list, and then abandoned.
Because expressions like have something against and stick to are inherently opinionated.
They carry attitude. They're meant for negotiation or defending a stance. You can't just use them to recite a boring fact about your weekend.
So the suggestion is we can elevate the practice prompts by framing them around complex dilemmas, mild controversies, or deeply reflective scenarios that inherently require longer, more detailed and passionate responses.
We have to design prompts that are literally impossible to answer in a single sentence.
Inject some tension.
Yes, when you require an adult learner to justify a difficult choice, you force them to negotiate meaning. They aren't just reciting, they are thinking critically in real time.
They have to employ discourse markers, linking words, and complex sentence structures to make their point.
That is where true fluency is forged.
Looking at concrete examples instead of asking about a popular food to practice have something against you, you might ask if a senior supervisor clearly has something against your proposal. What strategic steps would you take to win them over without causing offense?
That is such a brilliant pivot. It takes a mundane concept
and turns it into a professional puzzle.
An adult learner is going to have a lot to say about navigating a difficult boss.
They have to consider corporate hierarchy and diplomacy, naturally extending their time speaking.
And for the phrase stick to, you could pivot from asking about exercise routines to a debate prompt.
Because the exercise routine prompt is a bit cliché, everyone has had that exact conversation 100 times in language classes.
Exactly. Instead, you ask, in a rapidly changing industry, is it more dangerous to stick to proven traditional methods or to constantly take up unproven challenges?
Notice how that prompt organically forces the learner to use two of the target expressions simultaneously.
While demanding that they take a philosophical stance.
And the beauty of a prompt like that is that it inherently generates pushback. If one student argues for traditional methods to maintain stability, the other can play devil's advocate,
arguing that taking up unproven challenges is the only way a company survives disruption.
You've instantly created the exact environment required to truly hold a conversation. They are debating, interrupting, conceding points.
They are using the language authentically. These are just a few examples of how to spark the kind of deeper debate that builds true fluency.
It respects the intelligence of the adult learner. They want to express complex, professional, and personal philosophies in their target language.
When the prompts are sophisticated, the language output will naturally rise to meet that level of sophistication.
Absolutely.
So to briefly recap the core actionable takeaways from our critique today. First, integrating the isolated vocabulary into cohesive dialogues to demonstrate natural context. Second, building controlled practice scaffolding before the breakout rooms to alleviate cognitive overload. And finally, elevating the practice questions to provoke deeper, extended debate.
Implementing these changes will be incredibly rewarding. By providing that rich context, creating safe intermediate practice spaces, and demanding more sophisticated discourse, you transform this material from a simple vocabulary list into a highly immersive language acquisition tool.
We warmly invite the listener to implement these actionable suggestions and submit their revised lesson material back to the critique for further feedback.